When a billionaire walks into a courtroom ready to end his marriage forever, he never expected his estranged wife to appear carrying the one thing that would change everything: their newborn baby. Cameron Vale built a billion-dollar empire by choosing profit over people, success over family, and ambition over love. For 9 months he ignored his pregnant wife Isabel, missing every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, and even the birth of his own son. His obsession with closing deals cost him the most important relationship of his life. Now, sitting in that cold courtroom with divorce papers in hand, Cameron is ready to make their separation official. He's convinced himself that ending their marriage is just another business transaction. But when the courtroom door opens and Isabel walks in carrying their baby boy, a child Cameron has never even held, everything he thought he knew about what matters crumbles in an instant. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead as Cameron sits at the plaintiff's table, his charcoal suit pressed perfectly, his expression blank. He spent last night rehearsing this moment like a business presentation. His lawyer, Gerald Morrison, shuffles papers beside him, whispering about settlement amounts and custody arrangements that Cameron barely hears. The courtroom smells like old wood and broken promises. Cameron checks his watch. The hearing should start in 5 minutes. He wants this over with. He's already mentally planning his afternoon meeting with investors from Singapore. His phone vibrates in his pocket, probably his assistant confirming his lunch reservation. He ignores it. He's good at ignoring things, at pushing away anything that doesn't fit into his carefully controlled world. The door at the back of the courtroom opens. Cameron doesn't look up at first. Gerald nudges him. "Your wife is here." Cameron turns and his entire world stops. Isabel Vale walks down the center aisle and she's not alone. Cradled against her chest in a blue wrap is a baby. Their baby. The son Cameron has never met. Isabel looks different than he remembers. Her natural hair is pulled back in a simple bun. She wears a green dress that brings out the warmth in her brown skin. But it's her eyes that shake him. Those eyes that once looked at him with love now hold only exhaustion and determination. She walks past his table without glancing at him. The baby makes a small sound, something between a coo and a whimper. Cameron feels something twist in his chest, something he hasn't felt in months. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the first crack in the wall he built around his heart. Isabel takes her seat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a sharp woman named Denise Crawford. She adjusts the baby in her arms, and Cameron sees tiny fingers grip the edge of the wrap. Those fingers are so small. How is something so small even real? Gerald leans over. "Did you know she was bringing the baby?" Cameron shakes his head. He can't speak. His mouth is dry. The judge enters and everyone stands. Cameron's legs feel unsteady. Judge Helen Ortiz, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, surveys the courtroom with the expression of someone who has seen every kind of human mess. "Please be seated," she says. Her voice carries authority softened by years of wisdom. "We're here today regarding the petition for divorce filed by Cameron Vale against Isabel Vale. I've reviewed the paperwork." Cameron tries to focus on the judge's words, but his eyes keep drifting to Isabel. She's whispering something to the baby, her lips moving against the tiny head. The baby has a cap on, one of those hospital caps that newborns wear. How old is he? 3 weeks? 4. Cameron doesn't even know his own son's age. The judge looks at Cameron over her glasses. "Mr. Vale, you filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Cameron says. His voice sounds hollow. "And Mrs. Vale, you've agreed to the divorce. Is that correct?" Isabel lifts her chin. "Yes, Your Honor. I see here that you gave birth." Judge Ortiz checks her papers. 19 days ago. To a boy named Benjamin Vale. "Yes, Your Honor," Isabel says quietly. The judge sets down her papers. She removes her glasses and looks between Cameron and Isabel with an expression Cameron can't quite read. "Mr. Vale, have you met your son?" The courtroom is so quiet Cameron can hear his own heartbeat. Gerald shifts uncomfortably beside him. Cameron opens his mouth, closes it, then finally says, "No, Your Honor." "You haven't met your 19-day-old son?" "No." "Were you present at the birth?" Cameron's jaw tightens. "I was out of the country on business." "I see." Judge Ortiz puts her glasses back on. "Mrs. Vale, may I ask why you brought the baby today?" Isabel's voice is steady, but Cameron can hear the emotion underneath. "I thought he should see what he's walking away from, Your Honor. I thought maybe if he looked at his son, really looked at him, he might understand what he's about to lose." The words hit Cameron like a physical blow. He stares at the table in front of him, at the neat stack of divorce papers, at his expensive pen, at the life he built on prioritizing everything except the people who mattered. What kind of man divorces his wife 3 weeks after she gives birth to his child? What kind of father never even holds his own son? Judge Ortiz leans back in her chair. I'm going to call a 30-minute recess. Mr. Vale, I suggest you use this time wisely. The gavel comes down and Cameron flinches at the sound. Before we continue with Cameron's journey, I need to ask you something important. Have you ever made a choice you regretted, one that made you realize you were chasing the wrong things in life? Cameron is about to face that truth in the most painful way possible. If this story resonates with you, if you want to see whether Cameron finds redemption or loses his family forever, please subscribe and drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think Cameron deserves a second chance, or has he already lost too much to ever get it back? Your thoughts matter to this story. Cameron stood slowly as the judge left the bench. His legs felt like they might give out. Around him, people filed out of the courtroom, court staff shuffling papers, other lawyers discussing their cases. Gerald touched his arm. Cameron, we need to talk about the recess. The judge is clearly troubled by the optics here. You not meeting your son, it doesn't look good. We might need to adjust our strategy. Cameron barely heard him. His eyes were locked on Isabel, who was gathering her things while somehow managing to hold the baby with practiced ease. How did she do that? How did she make it look so natural when Cameron couldn't even imagine holding something so fragile? Give me a minute, Cameron said to Gerald. Cameron, I don't think. I said give me a minute. Cameron's tone was sharper than he intended. Gerald stepped back, hands raised in surrender, and walked out into the hallway. Cameron approached Isabel's table slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Denise Crawford, Isabel's lawyer, stood up, placing herself between Cameron and her client. Mr. Vale, I don't think this is appropriate. I just want to talk to my wife, Cameron said. Your soon-to-be ex-wife, Denise corrected. Isabel looked up at him, then really looked at him for the first time since walking into the courtroom. Her dark eyes were tired, ringed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from sleepless nights and broken dreams. But there was something else there too. Strength. The kind of strength Cameron never had to develop because money always smoothed his path. It's okay, Denise, Isabel said quietly. Give us a moment. Denise hesitated, then nodded and left, though not before giving Cameron a look that clearly said she'd be watching. Cameron stood there awkwardly, his hands in his pockets because he didn't know what else to do with them. You brought him, Cameron said. It was a stupid thing to say, obvious and empty. His name is Benjamin, Isabel said. Benjamin Cameron Vale. I gave him your middle name even though you weren't there. Even though you haven't called once to ask about him. I gave him part of you anyway because I'm not cruel like you've been. The words were delivered without anger, which somehow made them cut deeper. Anger he could have defended against. This calm statement of fact left him nothing to hide behind. Isabel, I don't. She shifted Benjamin in her arms. The baby made a small noise and she immediately started swaying gently, a motion so automatic it was clear she'd been doing it constantly for 19 days. Don't apologize. Don't make excuses. I've heard them all before. You were busy. You had an important meeting. You were building our future. Except you were building it without us. Cameron felt heat behind his eyes, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. Was he about to cry? Here. In a courtroom? He forced it down. Can I see him? Just look at him? Isabel studied his face for a long moment. Then she adjusted the wrap and turned slightly, angling Benjamin so Cameron could see. The baby's cap had slipped back, revealing a head of dark curly hair. His eyes were closed, tiny lashes resting against cheeks that were still round with newborn softness. His lips were pursed in sleep, and one small hand had escaped the wrap, fingers curled into a loose fist. Cameron's breath caught. This was his son. This tiny, perfect person was half him. Benjamin had his nose, that same slightly upturned shape. And those long fingers, even in a fist, looked like they might grow to match Cameron's hands. He looks like you, Isabel said softly. Everyone says so. He has your expressions too. When he's thinking hard about something, he gets this little wrinkle between his eyebrows, just like you do. What is he like? Cameron asked. The question came out before he could think about whether it made sense. Isabel's expression softened just a fraction. He likes being held close. He doesn't like loud noises. He's not a great sleeper yet, he wakes up every 2 hours. He prefers his left side when he sleeps. And he has this thing where if you hum to him, any song, he calms down immediately. Cameron absorbed this information like he was memorizing a business proposal. These were facts about his son, details he should have learned by being there, not by asking his estranged wife in a courtroom. Isabel, I know I've been. He struggled for words that felt true instead of corporate. I've been absent. Worse than absent. I've been selfish and wrong and blind to what mattered. But seeing him now, standing here with you, You what, Cameron? Isabel's voice was gentle but firm. You suddenly realize you have a son? You suddenly care? Where was this realization 9 months ago when I was throwing up every morning and you didn't even notice? Where was it 6 months ago when I was scared at the doctor's office and you were in a board meeting? Where was it when I was in labor calling you and you sent me to voicemail? Each question was a knife, precise and deserved. Cameron had no defense. He'd been in Tokyo, closing a merger with a tech company. The deal had been worth $200 million. He'd silenced his phone because the CEO across the table was talking and Cameron didn't want to seem rude. He'd chosen politeness to a stranger over his wife giving birth to his child. I can't change what I did, Cameron said. But maybe I can change what happens next. That's what this divorce is, Cameron. What happens next? You go back to your company, your deals, your empire. I raise our son with love and presence and all the things you never learned to give. We both move forward, just not together. Benjamin stirred in her arms, making small fussing sounds. Isabel immediately adjusted him, bringing him up to her shoulder and patting his back gently. The motion was so natural, so full of love, that Cameron felt something inside him break open. This was what he'd missed. Not just a birth, not just a baby. He'd missed watching Isabel become a mother. He'd missed seeing her learn these gentle movements, these instinctive responses. He'd missed everything that mattered. Can I hold him? The words came out before Cameron could stop them. Isabel froze. She looked at Cameron with an expression he couldn't read. Surprise? Doubt. Oh, you want to hold him? Please. She hesitated. Cameron could see her thinking, weighing the request, deciding if he deserved this moment. Finally she said, okay. But support his head. He can't do it himself yet. She moved closer and Cameron caught the scent of her, that familiar combination of cocoa butter and lavender that used to fill their bedroom. She carefully began to transfer Benjamin into Cameron's arms, guiding his hands, positioning them correctly. One hand under his bottom, one supporting his head and neck. Keep him close to your body so he feels secure. Cameron followed her instructions exactly. Benjamin settled into his arms, warm and solid despite being so small. He weighed almost nothing but somehow felt like he weighed everything in the world. The baby's eyes opened, revealing dark brown irises that looked up at Cameron with unfocused newborn attention. Hi, Cameron whispered. His voice cracked. Hi, Benjamin. I'm your dad. The baby blinked slowly. His mouth formed a small O shape, and then his face scrunched up. For a terrible moment, Cameron thought he was going to cry. But instead, Benjamin just yawned, a tiny, perfect yawn, and then settled back into sleep. Tears ran down Cameron's face. He didn't even try to stop them. He stood in that empty courtroom holding his son for the first time, and let himself feel the full weight of everything he'd thrown away for conference calls and contracts. I'm so sorry, he said, and he wasn't even sure if he was talking to Benjamin or Isabel or both. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I put work first. I'm sorry I made you feel alone when you needed me most. I'm sorry I'm meeting you now instead of the day you were born. Isabel stood beside him, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold despite the warm courtroom. Sorry doesn't change anything, Cameron. I know. He looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful, even exhausted. Maybe especially exhausted, because it showed how hard she'd been working, how much she'd been carrying alone. I know sorry isn't enough, but I want to be better. I want to be the father he deserves. The husband you deserved. You're speaking in past tense, Isabel said quietly. The husband I deserved. Not deserve. You've already decided this is over. Haven't you? Cameron asked. You signed the papers. You filed them. They stood in silence, both looking at Benjamin sleeping peacefully in Cameron's arms, unaware of the adult complications swirling around him. The bailiff appeared in the doorway. Judge Ortiz is ready to resume. Cameron didn't want to give Benjamin back. Holding his son felt like the first real thing he'd done in months, maybe years. But Isabel gently took him, tucking him back into the wrap with practiced ease. They walked back to their separate tables, separate lawyers, separate lives. Judge Ortiz returned to the bench and everyone stood. When she told them to sit, Cameron noticed she was watching him closely. Mr. Vale, did you use the recess productively? Yes, Your Honor. I held my son for the first time. I see. And how did that feel? Gerald shifted uncomfortably, probably wanting to object to the personal nature of the question. But Cameron answered honestly. Like waking up from a long sleep and realizing I'd missed everything important while I was dreaming about things that don't matter. Judge Ortiz nodded slowly. Mr. and Mrs. Vale, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen every kind of divorce. Bitter ones, amicable ones, sad ones, necessary ones. But I have to tell you, this one troubles me. Mrs. Vale, you gave birth 19 days ago, and instead of recovering at home with your husband's support, you're here ready to end your marriage. Mr. Vale, you built a billion-dollar empire but couldn't find time to be present for your pregnant wife. You both signed these papers, agreed to the terms, and by law, I could grant this divorce right now. Cameron's heart sank. She was going to approve it. But I'm not going to do that, Judge Ortiz continued, because I don't believe either of you actually wants this divorce. Mrs. Vale, you brought your baby to this courtroom. You could have left him with family, but you didn't. You brought him because you wanted Mr. Vale to see him, to see what he was walking away from. That tells me you still hope he might change. And Mr. Vale, the way you looked at your son just now, that wasn't the look of a man ready to walk away. That was the look of a man who just realized what he's about to lose. She leaned forward, her expression stern but not unkind. So here's what's going to happen. I'm denying this divorce petition, but with conditions. This is a 90-day continuance. During these 90 days, Mr. Vale, you will attend court-mandated parenting classes every Saturday. You will also attend couples counseling with your wife every Wednesday evening. You will spend time with your son, learning to be his father. At the end of 90 days, we'll reconvene. If at that point you both still want the divorce, I'll grant it. But you're going to give this marriage and this family 90 days of real effort first. Cameron's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, with all respect, my client has a very demanding schedule. These requirements might be. Your client's schedule is exactly the problem, Mr. Morrison, Judge Ortiz interrupted. And unless you want me to hold your client in contempt, I suggest you advise him to follow my orders. A marriage and a child's welfare are at stake here. Mr. Vale can manage his schedule around that, or he can explain to his son one day why closing business deals was more important than being his father. She looked at Cameron directly. Do you understand the terms, Mr. Vale? Cameron stood. Every logical part of his brain was screaming that this was absurd. He had meetings, obligations, investors depending on him. His company needed him. But Benjamin's weight in his arms was still fresh in his memory. That tiny warmth, that perfect trust, that moment of connection he'd never felt with any business partner or client. Yes, Your Honor, Cameron said. I understand. Mrs. Vale? Isabel stood, shifting Benjamin in her arms. She looked tired and wary, but there was something in her eyes that might have been hope. Yes, Your Honor. Good. The court will provide you with information about the parenting class and counseling service. I want written confirmation that you're attending. And Mr. Vale, if you miss even one session, this divorce will be granted immediately with full custody to Mrs. Vale. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Then we're adjourned. I'll see you both in 90 days. Use that time wisely. The gavel came down and Cameron's life changed direction in an instant. He'd walked into this courtroom ready to end his marriage like it was just another business transaction. He was walking out bound to 90 days of trying to save it. Gerald gathered his papers, muttering about appeals and judicial overreach. Cameron ignored him. He watched Isabel leave with Benjamin, watched her navigate the courtroom door with one hand while protecting their son with the other. She'd been doing everything alone for so long. Maybe it was time to change that. Maybe it was time to figure out who Cameron Vale was when he wasn't hiding behind work. Maybe it was time to become the man his wife needed and the father his son deserved. He had 90 days to figure it out. 90 days to save his family. 90 days to save himself. 9 months earlier, the Vale house had been filled with different energy. Isabel stood in their kitchen, holding a small white stick that would change everything. 3 pink lines. She'd taken 4 tests, all showing the same result. Pregnant. She should have been terrified. They'd only been married 2 years and Cameron's company was in the middle of rapid expansion. But instead of fear, Isabel felt joy bubbling up inside her. Baby. They were going to have a baby. Cameron was in his home office talking on the phone with someone in London about server contracts. Isabel could hear his voice through the door, confident and commanding. She knocked softly and opened the door. He glanced up, held up one finger to signal he needed a minute and kept talking. Isabel waited, clutching the pregnancy test. She'd imagined this moment so many times. She thought maybe he'd sweep her up in his arms, spin her around, call his mother immediately with the news. When he finally hung up, He looked at her with distracted affection. Hey, sorry about that. Crisis with the European servers. What's up? Isabel held out the test. I'm pregnant. Cameron blinked. Then his face split into the biggest smile she'd seen in months. Pregnant? Really? Are you sure? For test, sure. He stood up and crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into a hug. For that perfect moment, Isabel felt like everything would be okay. He was happy. They were happy. They were going to be parents together. This is incredible, Cameron said against her hair. A baby. Our baby. When did you find out? How far along are you? I just found out this morning. I'm not sure how far along yet. I need to make a doctor's appointment. We'll get you the best OB in the city, Cameron said. Whatever you need. This is amazing, Isabel. They'd spent that evening talking about names, about whether they wanted to know the gender, about how they'd need to turn the guest room into a nursery. Cameron looked up pediatricians on his phone, making lists, planning like he planned everything else in his life. Isabel fell asleep that night feeling loved and supported and ready for this new chapter. That feeling lasted 2 weeks. The first missed appointment was for the initial OB visit. Cameron had it marked on his calendar. He'd promised to come. But the morning of the appointment, his head of engineering quit unexpectedly, and Cameron had to handle the crisis. He called Isabel from the office. I'm so sorry, but I can't make it. Mitchell just resigned and I need to meet with the team. Can you reschedule? Isabel, sitting in the waiting room already, felt her first flutter of disappointment. I'm already here, Cameron. Can't your VP handle it? This is too important. I need to be here. You understand, right? You'll be fine at the appointment. It's just the first one. Just the first one. Isabel went in alone, listened to the doctor explain prenatal vitamins and genetic testing and due dates alone, saw her baby on the ultrasound for the first time alone. The baby looked like a tiny bean, barely visible, but Isabel felt her heart expand anyway. She took pictures of the ultrasound images to show Cameron. When she got home, he was still at the office. When he finally came home at midnight, he was exhausted. She showed him the ultrasound pictures. He smiled, kissed her forehead and said, "That's great, honey." But she could see his mind was elsewhere. The pattern continued. Cameron promised to come to the 12-week appointment where they could hear the heartbeat. He missed it because of an investor meeting that ran long. He promised to come to the 20-week anatomy scan where they could learn the baby's gender. He missed it because he had to fly to San Francisco unexpectedly for a product launch. Isabel went to every appointment alone. She heard their baby's heartbeat for the first time alone. She learned they were having a boy alone. She watched him move and stretch on the ultrasound screen alone. Each time, she took pictures and videos to show Cameron, and each time he looked at them with distracted interest before his phone rang or an email demanded his attention. "You're carrying my air and handling it like a champ," he said once, thinking it was a compliment. Not son. Not baby. Like this child was just another asset for the Vale Empire. Isabel tried to be understanding. She knew Cameron's work was demanding. She knew he was under pressure. But she was under pressure too. Her body was changing in ways that scared her. She had morning sickness so bad she couldn't keep anything down for weeks. Her back ached. Her feet swelled. And she was doing it all alone. Her best friend Renee noticed first. They were having lunch. Isabel was 5 months pregnant, and Cameron had just canceled their anniversary dinner for the 3rd time. "Girl, when was the last time Cameron actually spent time with you?" Renee asked gently. Isabel pushed her salad around her plate. "He's busy. The company is growing. The company's been growing for 2 years. You're pregnant with his child. He should make time." "He will," Isabel said, more to convince herself than Renee. "Once things settle down, he'll be more present." But things never settled down. There was always another crisis, another deal, another meeting that couldn't be missed. Isabel started going to prenatal yoga classes alone, attending baby care seminars alone, picking out nursery furniture alone. She'd send Cameron pictures and links asking his opinion, and he'd respond with "looks good," or "whatever you think is best." 6 months into the pregnancy, Isabel decided to surprise him. She spent a whole day decorating the nursery. She painted the walls a soft gray-blue, assembled the crib, hung curtains with little elephants on them, and arranged all the baby clothes she'd been collecting in the dresser drawers. When Cameron came home, she led him upstairs excitedly to show him. He stood in the doorway, looking around with an expression Isabel couldn't read. "This is nice," he said. "Just nice." Isabel's excitement deflated. She'd spent hours on this, imagining his reaction. "Don't you love it? Look, I got this mobile that plays classical music. And this rocking chair for late-night feedings. And these books I thought we could read to him every night. It's great, Isabel. Really. I just have a lot on my mind right now. We're finalizing the merger with TechStream, and the numbers aren't adding up. Cameron, can you stop thinking about work for 5 minutes and focus on our son? He looked at her, then really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that chilled her. Distance. Like she was an employee bringing him a problem instead of his wife sharing a milestone. I am focused on our son, he said. I'm working this hard for him. For us. So he'll never want for anything. I don't need him to have everything, Isabel said quietly. I need him to have his father. He will. Once I get through this merger. Once the company stabilizes. Once. There's always going to be once, Isabel interrupted. There's always going to be something more important. I need you now, Cameron. Not once everything is perfect. They'd had their first real fight that night. Cameron insisted he was doing his best, providing for their future. Isabel tried to explain that money wasn't the same as presence. They went to bed angry, sleeping on opposite sides of their king bed like two strangers who happened to share a mattress. After that, Isabel stopped asking Cameron to come to appointments. She stopped sending him ultrasound pictures. She stopped decorating the nursery when he was home. She built a life around her pregnancy that didn't include him because including him only led to disappointment. Her sister Nadine flew in from Atlanta when Isabel was 7 months pregnant. Nadine took one look at her sister and immediately knew something was wrong. They sat in the nursery, Nadine helping fold tiny onesies while Isabel cried. He's not here, Isabel said through tears. I'm about to have his baby and he's not here. Not really. He's physically in this house maybe 4 hours a day, and even then he's on his phone or his laptop. It's like I'm already a single mother. Nadine hugged her sister close. Have you told him how serious this is? Like really told him? I've tried. He just says he's working for our future. He doesn't understand that our future is happening right now and he's missing it. Then you need to make him understand. Tell him straight up. You need him to be present or you're done. Isabel had tried. 7 months pregnant, uncomfortable and emotional and scared, she'd sat Cameron down and told him she needed him to change. She needed him at appointments. Needed him to help prepare for the baby. She needed him to act like he cared about something other than quarterly earnings. Cameron had listened. He'd nodded. He'd promised to do better. And for about a week he did. He came home earlier. He asked about her day. He felt the baby kick and smiled. Isabel thought maybe they'd turned a corner. Then the Tokyo deal came up. 3 weeks before her due date, Cameron's company had a chance to merge with a Japanese tech firm. It would triple their market value overnight. The catch was that the CEO would only meet in person, only in Tokyo, and only during a very specific week. A week that fell right during Isabel's due date. Don't go, Isabel had begged. Please, Cameron. I could go into labor any day. Don't be on the other side of the world when your son is born. First babies are always late, Cameron said, repeating something he'd read online. The doctor said you'd probably go past your due date. This meeting is 1 week. I'll be back before anything happens. You can't guarantee that. This deal is worth $300 million, Isabel. That's our son's college fund, his inheritance, his future. I have to go. His future is having a father who's present. Cameron had looked at her with frustration. Why can't you understand that this is how I show love? By providing, by building something secure. My father never gave us anything. I'm making sure our son never struggles like I did. Your father was never home either, Isabel said quietly. Is that really what you want to repeat? That had hit a nerve. Cameron's face had closed off completely. They'd gone to bed in silence. The next morning he'd left for Tokyo without saying goodbye. Isabel had cried all morning. Then she'd called her sister. I can't do this anymore, Nadine. I can't be married to someone who chooses work over everything. When this baby comes, I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. Are you sure? Nadine had asked gently. I'm sure. I don't want my son growing up thinking this is what marriage looks like. I don't want him learning that the people you love always come second to your career. I'd rather raise him alone than raise him in a house where his father is a ghost. 3 days later, Isabel went into labor. 3 weeks early, just like she'd feared. She'd called Cameron immediately, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She texted him. In labor. Going to hospital. No response. Nadine rushed over and drove Isabel to the hospital. The contractions were close and painful. Isabel labored for 14 hours, asking every nurse who entered if her husband had called. None of them had heard anything. Nadine held her hand through every contraction, every push, every terrifying moment when the doctor said the baby's heart rate was dropping and they might need an emergency C-section. But Benjamin came naturally in the end, crying and perfect at 6:12 in the morning. Isabel held her son for the first time and felt love like she'd never imagined. This tiny person who'd been growing inside her was real, was here, was hers. She counted his fingers and toes, studied his perfect face and made him a silent promise. She would never make him feel second best to anything. Cameron called 12 hours later. His phone had been off during the crucial investor meeting, and when he finally checked it, he saw dozens of messages. He'd sounded panicked on the phone, apologizing profusely, saying he'd catch the next flight home. But by then it was too late. The damage wasn't just done, it was permanent. Isabel told him through the hospital room door that she didn't want to see him. That she'd made her decision. That she was filing for divorce. When Cameron finally made it home 2 days later, Isabel had already moved into the guest room with Benjamin. She'd already contacted a lawyer. She'd already started building a life that didn't include him. Cameron had stood outside her door, pleading to see his son, to talk to her, to explain. But Isabel was done with explanations. She was done with promises that meant nothing. She was done with hoping he'd change when he'd proven over and over that work would always come first. So she'd done what she thought was best. She'd filed for divorce. She'd signed the papers. She'd prepared to be a single mother because in every way that mattered, she already was one. Standing in that courtroom 9 months later, holding Benjamin and facing Cameron across the aisle, Isabel remembered every missed appointment, every broken promise, every night she'd cried alone. Part of her had brought Benjamin today to make Cameron hurt the way she'd hurt. To make him see what he'd thrown away. But another part of her, the part she tried to bury, had brought Benjamin because she still hoped. Hoped that seeing his son might wake Cameron up. Hoped that it wasn't too late to save what they'd once had. She'd never admit that hope out loud. But it was there, fragile and stubborn, like a flower growing through concrete. 7 months pregnant, Isabel woke up at 2 in the morning with cramps that scared her. They weren't contractions, she knew what those were supposed to feel like from her birthing class. These were different, sharp and persistent. She lay in bed for an hour, hoping they'd go away, but they only got worse. Finally, she reached over and shook Cameron's shoulder. He was sleeping hard, the way he always did after working 18-hour days. Cameron, wake up. He stirred, groggy. What's wrong? I'm having pains. Bad ones. I think we should call the doctor. That woke him up. He sat up quickly, rubbing his eyes. Okay. Yeah. Where's your phone? They called the emergency line, and the nurse on call asked questions about the pain, its frequency, any bleeding. Based on Isabel's answers, she told them to come to the hospital for monitoring. Cameron helped Isabel get dressed, moving quickly, his face showing the first real fear she'd seen from him in months. At the hospital, they ran tests and monitored the baby's heartbeat. After 2 hours, the doctor came in with results. The baby was fine, but Isabel's blood pressure was elevated. Not dangerously high, but high enough to be concerning. Combined with the cramping, the doctor wanted Isabel on modified bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. What does that mean exactly? Cameron asked. It means she needs to take it easy, the doctor explained. No strenuous activity. Lots of rest. No work if possible. Her job requires standing and movement. I'm the director of the Riverside Youth Center, Isabel said. She'd cut back her hours but was still going in 3 days a week. I mainly do programming and fundraising. You'll need to work from home for now, the doctor said. And keep your stress low. High blood pressure during pregnancy can lead to complications. We want to avoid that. They'd driven home in silence. The sun was coming up, painting the sky pink and orange. Isabel watched the familiar streets pass by, feeling scared in a way she hadn't let herself feel before. Something could go wrong. The baby could be in danger. This wasn't just about being tired or uncomfortable anymore. This was serious. At home, Cameron helped her to bed, propped pillows around her, brought her water and crackers. What do you need? Should I call your sister? Your mom? I need you, Isabel said simply. I need you to be here. To help me through this. Of course, Cameron said. I'll work from home today. Let me just send a few emails to let everyone know I'll be remote. He'd kept that promise for 3 days. 3 whole days where Cameron worked from his home office, checked on Isabel regularly, brought her meals, kept her company. Isabel started to relax. Maybe the health scare had been a wake-up call for him. Maybe now he'd understand what really mattered. On the 4th day, his lead investor called with an emergency. One of their major partners was threatening to pull out of a deal unless Cameron met with them immediately to address concerns. It couldn't be handled over the phone or video call. It had to be in person at their office downtown. Cameron stood in their bedroom doorway, phone in hand, looking torn. I don't want to leave you. How long will you be gone? A few hours. Maybe 4 at most. I'll be back by dinner. Isabel wanted to tell him not to go. But she also knew that look in his eyes. He'd already decided. Okay. Just please hurry back. I will. I promise. Call me if you need anything. He'd left at 10 in the morning. By 2 that afternoon, Isabel hadn't heard from him. She texted, "How's it going?" No response for an hour. Then, running longer than expected. This is complicated. By 6 he still wasn't home. Isabel was getting hungry and couldn't go downstairs to make dinner. She texted again, "Can you pick up food on your way home?" No response. By 8 she was furious and worried. Had something happened to him? Was he okay? At 9:30 Cameron walked in. Isabel was still in bed, having eaten crackers and cheese for dinner because it was all she had within reach. "Where have you been?" she asked, trying to keep the anger out of her voice. The meeting went way longer than expected. Then traffic was terrible. "I'm sorry, I should have called. You should have come home. You promised a few hours. It's been almost 12 hours. Cameron ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "I know. But this was important. If we lost this investor, we'd lose 30% of our funding. I couldn't let that happen. And what about what's happening here? I've been alone all day, unable to even walk downstairs to make dinner. I needed you. Isabel, come on. You're fine. The baby's fine. I'm here now. What do you want me to say?" Something inside Isabel cracked. "I want you to say that I'm more important than a meeting. That your baby is more important than 30% of your funding. I want you to say that you'll put us first just once." Cameron's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. Everything I do is for us. For this family. I'm building something here." "You're building a company," Isabel said, her voice rising. "You're not building a family. A family requires you to actually be here. I am here. Your body is here. But you're not. Even now you're thinking about work. I can see it in your eyes. You're already planning tomorrow's meetings in your head." Cameron looked away, which was answer enough. They sat in angry silence for a long moment. Then Isabel said something that surprised them both. "Maybe we should separate after the baby is born." Cameron's head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me. Maybe we need to admit this isn't working. You're not cut out to be a husband or a father. You're cut out to be a CEO. So be that. And I'll be a mother. We don't need to pretend we're doing this together when we're clearly not. You're being dramatic. You're on bed rest, you're emotional. Let's talk about this when you're thinking clearly." The condescension in his tone made Isabel's blood boil. "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. For the first time in months, actually. I'm thinking that I don't want my son to grow up watching his father prioritize everything except him. I'm thinking that I'd rather do this alone than do it with someone who makes me feel alone anyway." "Isabel, stop. You're upset. I get it. I should have communicated better today. But talking about separation when you're 7 months pregnant with our child, that's not rational. What's not rational is staying married to someone who doesn't show up. Literally. You didn't show up to my appointments. You didn't show up to help pick out nursery furniture. You showed up today for 4 hours before abandoning me again. When exactly are you going to show up, Cameron? When our son is born. When he's 1, 5, 10. Or are you just going to miss his whole childhood because you were too busy in meetings?" Cameron stood up, pacing the room. "You're being unfair. Most men don't go to every prenatal appointment. Most men don't decorate nurseries. I'm providing for this family in the ways that matter." "The ways that matter to you?" Isabel shot back. "Not to me. Not to our son. He's not even born yet. How do you know what he needs?" "Because I'm his mother. And I know he needs a father who's present. Who knows his favorite things and his fears and his dreams. Not a father who sends money but never sends himself." Cameron stopped pacing and looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Something like desperation mixed with anger. "What do you want from me, Isabel? You want me to quit my job? Walk away from everything I built? We'd lose the house, the cars, the security. Is that what you want? I want you to find balance. I want you to treat your family like it's as important as your company. That's all. That's always been all I wanted." "That's all?" Cameron laughed, but it was bitter. "You make it sound so simple. Like I can just decide to work less and everything will be fine. I have a board of directors, shareholders, employees depending on me. I can't just check out. I'm not asking you to check out. I'm asking you to check in. To be here when I need you. To be a partner instead of just a provider. They'd stared at each other across the bedroom, the distance between them feeling like miles instead of feet. Finally Cameron said, I don't know how to be what you need. Then maybe we should stop trying, Isabel said quietly. Cameron left the room. She heard him in his office, the door closing, the lock clicking. He slept there that night. And the next night. And the one after that. They stopped talking unless it was about logistics. Doctor appointments, grocery needs, bills that needed paying. Their marriage became a business arrangement, cold and transactional. Isabel moved into the guest room permanently. She told herself it was because she needed space from Cameron to think. But really, it was because sleeping in their bed without him felt lonelier than sleeping in a different room entirely. Her mother called, having heard about the bed rest from Nadine. Baby girl, how are you holding up? I'm okay, Mama. And Cameron? He's taking care of you? Isabel didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to worry her mother. He's doing his best. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that boy loves you, Isabel. I saw it on your wedding day. Sometimes men don't know how to show it right. Sometimes they need help learning. I'm tired of teaching him, Mama. I'm tired of explaining how to be a husband and a father. He's a grown man. He should know. Should and do are different things. Your daddy didn't know how to be present at first either. He worked 3 jobs trying to provide for us. I had to sit him down and tell him I'd rather have him than his money. What did he say? He said he was scared. Scared he wouldn't be enough, scared he'd fail us. So he buried himself in work because that was something he could control. Once I understood his fear, we could work on it together. Isabel thought about this. Had she ever asked Cameron what he was afraid of? Or had she just been angry at his choices without understanding why he made them? That night, when Cameron emerged from his office to get water, Isabel called to him from the guest room. Can we talk? He appeared in the doorway looking wary. About what? About why you work so much. Really why? Cameron leaned against the doorframe. Because I have to. Because that's what being a CEO means. No, deeper than that. What are you afraid of? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, I'm afraid of failing. Of not being enough. My father worked himself to death trying to provide for us, and we still ended up with nothing when he died. No savings, no insurance, nothing. I watched my mother struggle. I watched her work herself sick trying to keep us fed and housed. I promised myself I'd never put my family in that position. So I work. I build. I secure our future so you and our son never have to worry about money the way we did. Isabel felt her anger soften slightly. Cameron, we're not going to end up with nothing. You've already built more than enough to secure our future. But you're so focused on building financial security that you're losing everything else. I don't know how to stop, he admitted. Every time I try to slow down, I think about my mother crying over unpaid bills. I think about being 8 years old and wearing shoes with holes because we couldn't afford new ones. And I push harder. I understand that, Isabel said gently. But you're not 8 anymore. And I'm not your mother. We're not in danger of losing everything. We're in danger of losing each other. Cameron nodded slowly. I know you're right. But knowing it and changing it are different things. I don't know how to be different than I am. Then maybe we do need time apart, Isabel said. Not because I don't love you, but because neither of us knows how to fix this right now. And bringing a baby into this tension isn't fair to him. Cameron's face fell. You really want to separate? I don't want to. But I don't know what else to do. I can't keep feeling like I'm fighting for scraps of your attention. I can't keep wondering if my husband is going to show up for important moments. And I can't raise our son in a house where his father is always somewhere else, even when he's home. They didn't make any final decisions that night. But the seed was planted. Separation felt less like a threat and more like an inevitability. 2 months later, when Isabel went into labor alone because Cameron was in Tokyo, she watered that seed. And 3 weeks after Benjamin was born, she filed the papers that would end their marriage. Because sometimes loving someone isn't enough when they don't know how to love you back the way you need. The contractions started at 4 in the morning, 3 weeks before Isabel's due date. She woke up with a tightening across her belly that felt different from the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd been having for weeks. This felt real. This felt like it was happening. She reached for her phone, her first instinct still to call Cameron even though she knew he was halfway across the world. She pulled up his number, her thumb hovering over the call button. He was in Tokyo. It was evening there. He'd be in dinner meetings with the Japanese executives, his phone probably silenced. Still she called. It went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She sent a text. In labor. Contractions 5 minutes apart. Going to hospital. She waited, watching the screen for those 3 dots that would show he was typing back. Nothing. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and Isabel gasped. She called her sister. Nadine answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. Hello. It's time, Isabel said, breathing through the pain. The baby's coming. I'm on my way. 15 minutes. Did you call Cameron? He's not answering. Then forget him. I'm coming. Hold tight. Isabel got out of bed slowly, each movement feeling enormous. She'd packed her hospital bag weeks ago, had it ready by the door. She pulled on the red maternity dress she'd set aside for this moment, something comfortable and easy. Her hands shook as she tried to zip it. Another contraction. She leaned against the wall, counting through it the way they'd taught her in birthing class. Cameron was supposed to be her labor coach. They'd practiced breathing techniques together back when he still came to classes. Back when he still pretended this baby mattered as much as his company. Nadine arrived in record time, bursting through the front door with her overnight bag and a look of determination. Let's have this baby. The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions and breathing and Nadine's steady voice telling her everything would be okay. They checked into labor and delivery at 5:30. The nurses were efficient and kind, getting Isabel into a gown, hooking up monitors, checking her dilation. You're at 4 centimeters, the nurse said. This baby's coming today for sure. My husband's out of the country, Isabel said, even though it felt humiliating to admit. He's supposed to be on the next flight back, but I don't know if he'll make it. The nurse gave her a sympathetic look. Well, you've got your sister. And we're all here to support you. You're not doing this alone. Except she was. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. The father of her child was choosing a business meeting over her labor. That truth hit her harder than any contraction. The hours crawled by. 6 centimeters. 7. The pain increased until Isabel couldn't think about anything except getting through each wave. Nadine held her hand, wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, helped her walk the halls to speed things along. Has he called back? Isabel asked during a break between contractions. Nadine checked Isabel's phone. No. Nothing. Isabel felt tears leak from her eyes, mixing with sweat. He's going to miss it. He's going to miss everything. Then that's his loss, Nadine said fiercely. You're about to become a mama. You're about to meet your son. That's what matters. Not some man who can't get his priorities straight. By noon, Isabel was at 8 centimeters. The contractions were coming on top of each other now, barely any break between them. She'd declined the epidural, wanting to feel everything, though now she was questioning that choice. The pain was overwhelming. I can't do this, she gasped between contractions. Yes, you can, Nadine said firmly. You're the strongest person I know. You've done everything for this baby on your own. You can do this too. At 2 in the afternoon, 14 hours after her first contraction, Isabel was fully dilated. The doctor came in gloved and ready. Let's meet this baby. The pushing was the hardest thing Isabel had ever done. Every instinct screamed to stop, to rest, to give up. But she pushed through it literally. She pushed for her son, for the life she was about to hold, for the family she'd build even if she had to build it alone. I can see the head, the doctor said. One more big push, Mama. You've got this. Isabel pushed with everything she had left. And suddenly, impossibly, her baby was out. The sound of his first cry filled the room, and Isabel sobbed with relief and joy and exhaustion. They placed him on her chest, warm and perfect and real. Benjamin, she whispered. Hi, baby boy. Hi, my Benjamin. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a head of dark curly hair, eyes that would probably be brown like Cameron's. He was 7 pounds exactly, 19 inches long, and absolutely beautiful. Isabel counted his features, memorized his face, fell completely in love in an instant. Nadine was crying too, taking pictures, calling their mother to share the news. He's here, Mama. Benjamin's here and he's perfect. The nurses cleaned Benjamin up, weighed and measured him, wrapped him in a blue blanket and placed a tiny cap on his head. Then they gave him back to Isabel and she held her son for the first time with no monitors or urgent moments, just peace. Your daddy's missing this, she told Benjamin softly. But I'm not. I'm right here. I'll always be right here. She tried calling Cameron again. Still voicemail. She sent a text with a picture of Benjamin. Your son was born today. Benjamin Cameron Vale. 7 pounds, 19 inches. He's perfect. Hours passed. Isabel was moved to a recovery room. Family and friends started visiting. Her mother brought flowers. Renee brought balloons and tears of joy. Everyone wanted to hold Benjamin, to marvel at how beautiful he was, to tell Isabel she was amazing. But Cameron didn't call. It wasn't until almost midnight that Isabel's phone finally rang with his number. She almost didn't answer. But she did. Isabel? I just saw your messages. I'm so sorry, my phone died during the meeting and I didn't realize until just now. How are you? How's the baby? His voice sounded frantic, genuinely upset. But Isabel felt nothing but cold anger. His name is Benjamin, she said. Your son was born at 2:17 this afternoon. 14 hours of labor. Completely healthy. 7 pounds exactly. Can I see him? Can you FaceTime me? No. Isabel, please. I know I messed up, but let me see my son. You messed up 9 months ago, Cameron. You messed up when you started missing appointments. You messed up when you chose work over being present. You messed up when you decided a business deal was more important than being here when I needed you most. This was just the final mess up in a very long series. I'll get on the next flight. I'll be home in 12 hours. Don't bother coming to the hospital. By the time you get here, I'll be discharged. I'm going home. And when I get there, I want you to stay somewhere else. What? Isabel, that's our home. That's our son. It's my son, Isabel said, her voice breaking. I carried him alone. I gave birth to him alone. I'll raise him alone. You made your choice when you got on that plane. You chose your company. So go be with your company. Leave us alone. Isabel, please don't do this. I love you. I love our baby. You love your work more. And I'm done competing with it. I'll have my lawyer contact you about custody arrangements. Custody? You're talking about custody? Isabel, we're married. We're a family. We're a family on paper only. In reality, it's been just me for months. Now there's Benjamin, so it's the two of us. You're not part of this anymore. She hung up before he could respond. Then she turned off her phone completely. She didn't want to hear his excuses or his promises to change. She'd heard them all before and they never meant anything. That first night with Benjamin was hard. He didn't sleep well, fussing every hour, needing to be fed or changed or just held. Isabel was exhausted, her body aching from labor, her emotions raw. But every time she looked at her son's face, she felt certainty settle over her. She could do this. She would do this. Benjamin would have one parent who showed up, who put him first, who never made him feel like an obligation. That would have to be enough. Cameron tried calling dozens of times over the next 2 days. Isabel ignored every call. He sent texts begging her to reconsider, promising he'd change, saying he was booking the next flight home. She didn't respond to any of them. When she was discharged from the hospital, Nadine drove her home. The house felt empty even though it was full of baby supplies. Everything reminded her of Cameron. Their wedding photos on the wall. His coffee mug in the sink. His laptop still sitting on the kitchen counter. Nadine helped her get settled in the guest room, which had become Isabel's space over the past 2 months. They'd moved the bassinet in there, set up a changing station, made it into a little nursery. This would be home now. Just her and Benjamin. Are you sure about this? Nadine asked gently. About making him leave? I'm sure. I can't look at him right now without feeling so angry I can't breathe. He chose to miss the birth of his son. That's not something I can forgive. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. He chose work over family. Again. For the last time. When Cameron finally made it home 2 days later, jet-lagged and desperate, Isabel wouldn't let him in. She spoke to him through the door, Benjamin sleeping in her arms. I want to see him, Cameron pleaded. Please, Isabel. Let me meet my son. He's 2 days old and you're just now trying to meet him. Do you understand how wrong that is? I know. I know I should have been here. But I'm here now. Please. I've called a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. You'll get the papers in a few days. We'll work out custody then. Custody? Isabel, he's a newborn. He needs both parents. He needs one parent who shows up. I can be that. You've proven you can't. She heard Cameron crying on the other side of the door. Part of her wanted to open it, to let him hold Benjamin, to give him one more chance. But the larger part of her, the part that had been disappointed too many times, kept the door locked. Go to a hotel, Cameron. Go back to work. Go wherever you want. Just don't be here. She'd listened to him leave, heard his car pull out of the driveway, and then she'd broken down completely. Holding Benjamin against her chest, she'd cried for the marriage she'd wanted, for the father her son deserved, for all the dreams that were dying in the space of a few terrible days. But she'd also cried with relief. Relief that she didn't have to pretend anymore. Relief that she could stop hoping Cameron would change. Relief that she could move forward on her own terms. Benjamin stirred in her arms, making small sounds. She wiped her tears and focused on him. Just you and me now, baby boy. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be happy. And she'd meant it. In that moment, holding her newborn son in a house that suddenly felt more peaceful without her husband, Isabel had felt ready to face single motherhood. Ready to build a life that didn't revolve around waiting for Cameron to show up. She just hadn't expected him to fight back. To file divorce papers himself like it was his idea. To show up in that courtroom looking ready to walk away forever. And she definitely hadn't expected him to break down when he held Benjamin for the first time. Maybe there was still something worth saving. Maybe not. Either way, she had 90 days to find out. Have you ever given someone a second chance they didn't deserve, only to have them prove you right to doubt them? Or have you seen someone truly change when given the opportunity? Cameron's 90-day journey is just beginning, and the question is whether a man who's built his entire life around work can learn to build a life around love instead. Subscribe and comment your thoughts. Can people really change, or are we all just who we've always been? The hotel room Cameron checked into felt impersonal and cold. Gray walls, generic art, a bed too big for one person. He dropped his suitcase by the door and sat on the edge of the mattress staring at his phone. He had 17 missed calls from work, 43 unread emails, and text messages from his business partner asking where he was. He ignored all of them and opened his photos. He'd taken one picture in the courtroom, just one, when he was holding Benjamin. Isabel had looked away, giving him privacy for that moment. In the photo, you could see just a sliver of Benjamin's face peeking out from the blue wrap, and Cameron's hands, large and uncertain, cradling his son's tiny body. He stared at that photo for an hour, unable to look away. This was his child. His son. And he'd missed the first 19 days of his life. His phone rang. Jonathan Kim, his business partner and closest thing to a friend. Cameron answered. "Where have you been?" Jonathan demanded. "You disappeared. No one's heard from you. The Tokyo deal is falling apart because you haven't followed up with the terms." "Let it fall apart," Cameron said. Silence. Then, "What?" "I said let it fall apart. I don't care." "Cameron, this is a $300 million deal. You don't just let that fall apart." "I have a son," Cameron said. His voice cracked. "I have a 19-day-old son that I met for the first time today. In a courtroom. While my wife filed for divorce. Because I was in Tokyo closing that deal when she went into labor." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I didn't know." "How would you?" "I barely knew. I was so focused on work that I missed my own son's birth." "What kind of man does that?" "A man who's scared," Jonathan said simply. "I know you, Cameron. You bury yourself in work when you're scared. You always have. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be the husband Isabel needs. I only know how to be a CEO. Then learn. You built a billion-dollar company from nothing. You can figure out how to be present for your family. What if I can't? What if I'm like my father, just genetically incapable of being there? Your father worked 3 jobs to keep you fed. That's not being incapable. That's being scared and trying to provide the only way he knew how. Sound familiar?" Cameron closed his eyes. "I've lost them, Jonathan. Isabel won't even let me in the house. She's filing for divorce. Then fight for them. Show up. Be present. Do whatever it takes." After they hung up, Cameron sat in that hotel room and made a decision. He called his assistant Patricia and told her to clear his calendar for the next 3 days. Then he called the hospital and asked about parenting classes for new fathers. Then he called a therapist who specialized in work-life balance. He started building a plan the way he'd build any business strategy, except this time the goal wasn't profit. It was family. Meanwhile, at home, Isabel was learning to navigate life as a new mother. Benjamin was a good baby overall, but good was relative when you were sleeping 2 hours at a time and your body was still recovering from labor. Nadine stayed for the first week, helping with night feedings and diaper changes and the million overwhelming tasks that came with keeping a tiny human alive. "You're doing great," Nadine told her sister as they sat together at 3 in the morning, Benjamin finally sleeping in his bassinet after an hour of fussing. "I don't feel great. I feel exhausted and overwhelmed and angry." "Angry at Cameron?" "Angry at everything. Angry that he's not here. Angry that I wanted him to be here. Angry that having a baby is harder than I imagined. Angry that I'm angry when I should just be happy." Nadine squeezed her hand. "Postpartum is rough. Give yourself grace. And maybe think about talking to someone. A therapist or a support group. Isabel nodded. She knew Nadine was right. But she was too tired to think about adding one more thing to her plate. The divorce papers arrived by courier a week after Benjamin's birth. Isabel stared at them for a long time before opening the envelope. Cameron Vale versus Isabel Vale. Petition for dissolution of marriage. All the legal language that boiled down to, "We're ending this." She read through the terms. Cameron was offering generous child support, shared custody once Benjamin was older, and a fair split of their assets. Everything was reasonable and bloodless and businesslike. Just like Cameron approached everything. Isabel's lawyer, Denise Crawford, came by the house to review the papers. "These terms are very favorable for you," Denise said. "He's not fighting for primary custody. He's offering substantial support. He's basically giving you what you want." "Why does it feel like losing then?" Isabel asked. "Because divorce always feels like losing even when it's the right choice." Isabel signed the papers. Each signature felt final, like closing a door she'd once walked through with hope and love. Mrs. Isabel Vale agreeing to stop being Mrs. Isabel Vale. Agreeing to raise her son alone. Agreeing that her marriage was over. Denise suggested that Isabel bring Benjamin to the final divorce hearing. "Let the judge see what's at stake," she said. "Sometimes seeing the child makes the reality hit harder. Maybe it'll make your husband think twice about walking away." "He already walked away," Isabel said. But she agreed anyway. Not to manipulate Cameron, but because some part of her needed him to look at Benjamin. Needed him to see what he was choosing to lose. Needed him to understand that this wasn't just paperwork. This was their family dissolving. The 3 weeks between signing the papers and the court date passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. Isabel's mother came to visit, holding Benjamin and crying happy tears. Her friends brought meals and baby gifts. The house filled with flowers and balloons and all the trappings of new life. But at night, when everyone left and it was just Isabel and Benjamin, the house felt empty in a way it never had before. She'd catch herself listening for Cameron's car in the driveway. She'd see his coffee mug in the cupboard and remember how he liked it, black with 1 sugar. She'd find one of his ties in the laundry and hold it, breathing in his cologne, before putting it in a box of his things to eventually send to the hotel. Renee, her best friend since college, came by with takeout and wine. Isabel couldn't drink because she was breastfeeding, but she appreciated the gesture. "How are you really doing?" Renee asked as they ate Chinese food straight from the containers. "I don't know. Sometimes I'm okay. Sometimes I look at Benjamin and feel so much love I can't breathe. Sometimes I'm so angry at Cameron I want to scream. Sometimes I miss him so much I consider calling him. Then I remember he chose to miss our son's birth, and I get angry all over again. That's normal. You're grieving. I thought I'd be relieved. I thought once I made the decision to divorce him I'd feel free. But I just feel sad." "You can be sad and know you made the right choice. Those things aren't exclusive." Isabel fed Benjamin while they talked, marveling at how natural it had become. 3 weeks ago she'd been terrified of breastfeeding. Now it was second nature. She was learning and adapting and becoming the mother Benjamin needed, even when it was hard. "Have you heard from Cameron?" Renee asked carefully. "He texts sometimes. Asking how Benjamin is. I send him pictures. That's the extent of our communication." "Does he ask to see him?" "Every day. I keep saying no. I'm not ready to share custody yet. Benjamin's too young. That's what I tell myself anyway." "What's the real reason?" Isabel looked down at her son, his eyes closed in contentment as he ate. "I'm scared that if I let Cameron see him I'll want things I can't have. I'll want the fantasy of what we could have been instead of accepting the reality of what we are." "Which is?" "Two people who loved each other once but couldn't make it work. Two people who are better apart than together. Two people who'll have to figure out how to co-parent without being married." The night before the court date, Isabel couldn't sleep. Benjamin was actually sleeping well for once, a 4-hour stretch that should have let her rest. But she lay awake thinking about the next day. Thinking about seeing Cameron. Thinking about that final moment when a judge would declare their marriage over. She got up and went to Benjamin's bassinet, watching him sleep. He looked so peaceful, so innocent of all the adult complications happening around him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry you won't grow up with both parents in the same house. I'm sorry I couldn't make it work with your daddy. But I promise you'll be loved. So loved. That'll have to be enough." The morning of the hearing, Isabel dressed carefully. A green dress that made her feel strong. Comfortable shoes because she'd be holding Benjamin for potentially hours. She fed him, changed him, dressed him in a tiny outfit with elephants on it. Nadine offered to come, but Isabel wanted to do this alone. Well, not alone. With Benjamin. Her constant companion now. In the courthouse hallway, waiting for their case to be called, Isabel saw Cameron for the first time in 3 weeks. He looked terrible. Exhausted, like he hadn't been sleeping. His suit was perfectly pressed as always, but there was something different about him. Something lost. When he saw Benjamin, his whole face changed. The corporate mask fell away, and Isabel saw raw pain and longing. He started to approach, but his lawyer stopped him. They went into the courtroom as strangers who once promised to love each other forever. And then everything changed when Cameron held Benjamin for the first time. The bailiff's voice echoed in the hallway outside the courtroom. 30-minute recess. People filed out, lawyers talking in hushed tones, other families dealing with their own complicated situations. Cameron stood frozen at the plaintiff's table, watching Isabel gather her things while somehow managing to keep Benjamin secure in the wrap. Gerald touched Cameron's arm. We should strategize. The judge is clearly sympathetic to your wife. We need to adjust our approach. Give me a minute, Cameron said without taking his eyes off Isabel. Cameron, this is important. I said give me a minute. The sharpness in his tone surprised them both. Gerald stepped back, hands raised, and left Cameron alone. Cameron walked slowly toward Isabel's table. Her lawyer, Denise, immediately positioned herself between them like a guard. Mr. Vale, I don't think this is appropriate right now. I just want to talk to my wife, Cameron said. The word, wife, felt both natural and foreign. Was she still his wife if they were minutes away from signing papers that would end it? Your soon-to-be ex-wife, Denise corrected, her voice sharp. Isabel looked up then. Her eyes were tired but clear, holding emotions Cameron couldn't quite read. She adjusted Benjamin in the wrap, and Cameron saw his son's tiny hand move, fingers flexing in sleep. It's okay, Denise, Isabel said quietly. Give us a moment. Denise hesitated, clearly not liking this, but she nodded and walked out into the hallway. Her body language screamed that she'd be watching, ready to intervene if needed. Cameron stood there feeling awkward, his hands empty, his heart racing. You brought him, Cameron said, then immediately felt stupid for stating the obvious. His name is Benjamin, Isabel said. There was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion. Benjamin Cameron Vale. I gave him your middle name even though you weren't there. Even though you haven't called once to ask about him in person. I gave him part of you anyway because I'm not cruel like you've been. The words were delivered so calmly that they cut deeper than any screaming would have. Cameron felt his throat tighten. Isabel, I don't. She shifted Benjamin gently. The baby made a small noise and she immediately started swaying, a motion so automatic it was clear she'd been doing it constantly. Don't apologize. Don't make excuses. I've heard them all before. You were busy. You had an important meeting. You were building our future. Except you were building it without us. Cameron wanted to defend himself, to explain, to make her understand. But every defense felt hollow. She was right. He had been building without them. He'd convinced himself he was building for them, but really he'd been building an empire to hide behind. Can I see him? Cameron asked. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Just look at him? Isabel studied his face for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Cameron felt like he was being evaluated, weighed, measured against some standard he'd already failed. Finally, she adjusted the wrap and turned slightly, angling Benjamin so Cameron could see. The baby's hospital cap had slipped back, revealing dark curly hair that caught the fluorescent light. His eyes were closed, tiny lashes resting against cheeks still round with newborn softness. His lips were pursed in sleep, and one small hand had escaped the wrap, fingers curled into a loose fist. Cameron felt his breath catch in his chest. This was his son. This tiny, perfect person shared his DNA. Benjamin had his nose, that same slightly upturned shape Cameron had always been self-conscious about. And those long fingers, even in a fist, promised to grow into hands like Cameron's. He looks like you, Isabel said softly, and there was something in her voice that might have been sadness. Everyone says so. He has your expressions too. When he's thinking hard about something, he gets this little wrinkle between his eyebrows, just like you do when you're working. What is he like? Cameron asked. The question surprised him, coming out before he could filter it. Isabel's expression softened just a fraction. He likes being held close, feeling secure. He doesn't like loud noises, they startle him. He's not a great sleeper yet. He wakes up every 2 hours wanting to eat. He prefers his left side when he sleeps. And he has this thing where if you hum to him, Any song, he calms down immediately. It's like magic. Cameron absorbed these details like someone dying of thirst absorbing water. These were facts about his son, intimate knowledge that Isabel had earned through sleepless nights and constant attention. Knowledge Cameron should have gained by being there but didn't because he'd chosen differently. Isabel, I know I've been. He struggled, trying to find words that felt honest instead of corporate. I've been absent. Worse than absent. I've been selfish and wrong and blind to what mattered. But seeing him now, standing here with you, You what, Cameron? Isabel's voice was gentle but firm. She wasn't going to let him off easy with vague statements. You suddenly realize you have a son? You suddenly care? Where was this realization 9 months ago when I was throwing up every morning and you didn't even notice? Where was it 6 months ago when I was scared at the doctor's office and you were in a board meeting? Where was it when I was in labor, calling you and you sent me to voicemail? Each question landed like a physical blow. Cameron had no defense. He'd been in Tokyo, closing a merger with a tech company. The deal had been worth $200 million. He'd silenced his phone because the CEO across the table was explaining their infrastructure and Cameron didn't want to seem distracted. He'd chosen politeness to a stranger over answering his wife's call as she gave birth to their child. I can't change what I did, Cameron said. His voice was barely above a whisper. But maybe I can change what happens next. That's what this divorce is, Cameron. What happens next? You go back to your company, your deals, your empire. I raise our son with love and presence and all the things you never learned to give. We both move forward, just not together. Benjamin stirred in her arms, making small fussing sounds. Isabel immediately adjusted him, bringing him up to her shoulder and patting his back gently with practiced hands. The motion was so natural, so full of instinctive love, that Cameron felt something inside him break open. This was what he'd missed. Not just a birth, not just a baby. He'd missed watching Isabel transform into a mother. He'd missed seeing her learn these gentle movements, these automatic responses to their son's needs. He'd missed everything that actually mattered. Can I hold him? The words came out before Cameron could stop them, raw and desperate. Isabel froze. She looked at Cameron with an expression that held surprise, doubt, and something that might have been hope. You want to hold him? Please. Just for a minute. I need to. Cameron's voice broke. I need to hold my son. Isabel hesitated. Cameron could see her thinking, weighing the request, deciding if he deserved this moment. Seconds felt like hours. Then she said, okay. But you need to support his head. He can't hold it up himself yet. Newborns are delicate. She moved closer and Cameron caught her scent. That familiar combination of cocoa butter and lavender that used to fill their bedroom, that he'd breathe in when he'd finally collapse into bed next to her in the early morning hours. The scent reminded him of everything he'd taken for granted. Isabel carefully began to transfer Benjamin into Cameron's arms, her hands guiding his, positioning them correctly. One hand under his bottom, supporting his weight. One hand supporting his head and neck. Keep him close to your body so he feels secure. Newborns like feeling contained. Cameron followed her instructions exactly, terrified of doing something wrong. Benjamin settled into his arms, warm and solid despite being so small. He weighed almost nothing, maybe 7 pounds, but somehow felt like he weighed everything in the world. The responsibility of this tiny life settled over Cameron like a heavy blanket. The baby's eyes opened slowly, revealing dark brown irises that looked up at Cameron with unfocused newborn attention. Benjamin couldn't actually see Cameron's face yet. Isabel had mentioned babies couldn't see clearly at first, but it felt like his son was looking right into his soul anyway. Hi, Cameron whispered. His voice cracked on the single syllable. Hi, Benjamin. I'm your dad. I'm your daddy, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you were born. I'm so sorry for everything I missed. The baby blinked slowly, processing this new voice, these new arms. His mouth formed a small O shape, and for a terrible moment, Cameron thought Benjamin was going to cry. But instead, the baby just yawned, a tiny, perfect yawn that showed pink gums and a little tongue, and then he settled back into sleep like Cameron's arms were exactly where he belonged. Tears ran down Cameron's face. He didn't even try to stop them or hide them. He stood in that courtroom hallway holding his son for the first time, and let himself feel the full weight of everything he'd thrown away. All those conference calls that couldn't wait. All those business dinners that seemed so important. All those deals that were worth millions but cost him his family. I'm so sorry, Cameron said, and he wasn't even sure if he was talking to Benjamin or Isabel or both or maybe to himself. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I put work first. I'm sorry I made you feel alone when you needed me most. I'm sorry I'm meeting you now, 3 weeks late, instead of the day you were born when I should have been there. Isabel stood beside him, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold despite the warm hallway. Cameron noticed her hands trembling slightly. She was holding herself together, but barely. Sorry doesn't change anything, Cameron, she said quietly. I know. Cameron looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. She was beautiful, even exhausted. Maybe especially exhausted, because it showed how hard she'd been working, how much she'd been carrying alone while he buried himself in spreadsheets and strategy meetings. I know sorry isn't enough, but I want to be better. I want to be the father he deserves. The husband you deserved. You're speaking in past tense, Isabel pointed out. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The husband you deserved. Not deserve. You've already decided this is over. Haven't you? Cameron asked. You signed the papers. You brought our son to court to show me what I'm losing. You've moved on. You filed them first, Isabel reminded him. There was no accusation in her tone, just fact. You're the one who decided to end this legally. They stood in silence, both looking at Benjamin sleeping peacefully in Cameron's arms. The baby was completely unaware of the adult complications swirling around him, unaware that his parents were standing in a courthouse deciding whether to stay married or divorce. His face was peaceful, innocent, perfect. The bailiff appeared in the doorway, his expression neutral but his timing unfortunate. Judge Ortiz is ready to resume. Cameron didn't want to give Benjamin back. Holding his son felt like the first real thing he'd done in months, maybe years. It felt like waking up from a long sleep. It felt like coming home to something he didn't know he'd been missing. But Isabel gently reached for Benjamin, and Cameron had no choice but to let her take him. She tucked Benjamin back into the wrap with practiced ease, adjusting the fabric so he was secure against her chest. Her hands moved with confidence born of 3 weeks of constant practice. 3 weeks Cameron had missed. 3 weeks he could never get back. They walked back into the courtroom, their separate lawyers waiting at separate tables, their separate lives about to become official. Judge Ortiz returned to the bench and everyone stood. The rituals of court proceeding felt surreal to Cameron now. All this formality around the dissolution of something that had once been built on love. When Judge Ortiz told them to sit, Cameron noticed she was watching him closely. Mr. Vale, did you use the recess productively? Yes, Your Honor. I held my son for the first time. I see. And how did that feel? Gerald shifted uncomfortably beside Cameron, probably wanting to object to the personal nature of the question. But Cameron answered honestly, not caring if it made him look weak or emotional or unprofessional. Like waking up from a long sleep and realizing I'd missed everything important while I was dreaming about things that don't matter at all. A small smile tugged at Judge Ortiz's lips. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her face. Mr. and Mrs. Vale, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen every kind of divorce imaginable. Bitter divorces where people fight over coffee mugs. Amicable divorces where everyone shakes hands and wishes each other well. Sad divorces where people still love each other but can't find a way to make it work. Necessary divorces where staying married would hurt everyone involved. She paused, looking between Cameron and Isabel. But I have to tell you, this divorce troubles me in a way most don't. Mrs. Vale, you gave birth 19 days ago. 3 weeks. Instead of recovering at home with your husband's support, instead of enjoying those precious first weeks with your newborn, you're here in my courtroom ready to end your marriage. Mr. Vale, you built a billion-dollar empire but couldn't find time to be present for your pregnant wife. You couldn't be there when your son was born. And now you're here, ready to sign papers that will legally separate you from your family. Cameron felt heat crawl up his neck. Being called out by a judge felt like being scolded by a disappointed parent. You both signed these papers, Judge Ortiz continued. You both agreed to the terms. And by law, I could grant this divorce right now. Today. This moment. I could declare your marriage dissolved, set up a custody schedule, and send you both on your way. Cameron's heart sank. She was going to approve it. It was over. But I'm not going to do that, Judge Ortiz said firmly. Cameron's head snapped up. Beside him, Gerald stiffened. Across the aisle, Denise started to stand, probably to object, but the judge held up her hand. I'm not going to grant this divorce because I don't believe either of you actually wants it. Not really. Mrs. Vale, you brought your baby to this courtroom. You could have left him with your sister or your mother or a friend. But you didn't. You brought him here because you wanted Mr. Vale to see him, to see what he was walking away from. That tells me you still hope he might change. That tells me you're not ready to give up completely. Isabel opened her mouth, probably to protest, But Judge Ortiz continued. And Mr. Vale, the way you looked at your son just now, the way you held him, that wasn't the look of a man ready to walk away. That was the look of a man who just realized what he's about to lose and is terrified. That was the look of a man who wants to change but doesn't know how. Cameron felt exposed, like the judge could see straight through every defense he'd built. She wasn't wrong. So here's what's going to happen, Judge Ortiz said, leaning forward. This is a 90-day continuance. I'm denying the divorce petition temporarily with conditions. Mr. Vale, during these 90 days, you will attend court-mandated parenting classes every Saturday morning at the Westside Family Center. You will also attend couples counseling with your wife every Wednesday evening with Dr. Rachel Green. You will spend time with your son, learning to be his father. You will show up literally and figuratively. Gerald stood up quickly. Your Honor, with all respect, my client has a very demanding schedule. These requirements might be difficult to fulfill given his professional obligations. Judge Ortiz looked at Gerald with an expression that could have frozen fire. Your client's demanding schedule is exactly the problem, Mr. Morrison. Your client's professional obligations caused this marriage to fall apart in the first place. And unless you want me to hold your client in contempt of court, I suggest you advise him to follow my orders. A marriage and a child's welfare are at stake here. Mr. Vale can manage his schedule around that, or he can explain to his son one day why closing business deals was more important than being his father. Gerald sat down, properly chastised. Cameron almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Judge Ortiz turned her attention back to Cameron. Do you understand the terms, Mr. Vale? Every Saturday parenting class. Every Wednesday couples counseling. Regular time with your son. At the end of 90 days, we'll reconvene in this courtroom. If at that point you both still want the divorce, I'll grant it with no further questions. But you're going to give this marriage and this family 90 days of real effort first. Do I make myself absolutely clear? Cameron stood up, his legs shaky. Every logical part of his brain was screaming that this was absurd, that judges couldn't just mandate couples counseling, that he had investors and employees and obligations. His calendar for the next 90 days was already full of meetings and product launches and strategy sessions. But Benjamin's weight in his arms was still fresh in his memory. That tiny warmth, that perfect trust, that moment of connection he'd never felt with any business partner or board member or investor. His son. His family. Yes, Your Honor, Cameron said clearly. I understand and I'll comply with every requirement. Mrs. Vale? Judge Ortiz turned to Isabel. Isabel stood slowly, shifting Benjamin in her arms with practiced ease. She looked tired and wary, but there was something in her eyes that might have been hope. Fragile, cautious hope. Yes, Your Honor, she said quietly. Good. The court will provide you both with information about the parenting class location and the counseling service. I want written confirmation that you're attending these sessions. And Mr. Vale, if you miss even one class, even one counseling session, this divorce will be granted immediately with full custody to Mrs. Vale. Do I make myself crystal clear? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Then we're adjourned. I'll see you both in 90 days. Use that time wisely. Not everyone gets a second chance. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo forever. Cameron's life changed direction in that single moment. He'd walked into this courtroom ready to end his marriage like it was just another business transaction, another contract to dissolve. He was walking out bound to 90 days of trying to save it. Gerald gathered his papers, muttering under his breath about appeals and judicial overreach and how this was highly unusual. Cameron ignored him completely. His eyes were locked on Isabel as she gathered her things, as she carefully stood with Benjamin secure in the wrap, as she prepared to leave this courtroom and go back to the house they used to share. Isabel, Cameron called out. She paused at the aisle, turning slightly to look at him. Her expression was guarded, protective. What? Thank you. For bringing him. For letting me hold him. For giving me this chance even if the judge forced it. Isabel studied his face for a long moment. Then she said, Don't thank me yet. Talk is easy, Cameron. You've always been good at talk. It's the showing up part you struggle with. We have 90 days. Either you learn to show up or we end up right back here signing papers. Your choice. She walked out, Benjamin's tiny head visible over her shoulder, the two of them navigating the courtroom door together. Cameron watched them go, watched his wife and son leave without him, and felt the full weight of what the next 90 days would require. He had to change. Not just promise to change, not just talk about changing. Actually change. Restructure his priorities. Learn to be a father. Learn to be a husband worth staying married to. Learn to show up when it mattered. 90 days to save his family. 90 days to prove he could be different. 90 days to become the man his wife needed and the father his son deserved. He left the courtroom knowing that for the first time in his adult life, failure wasn't an option he could afford. Judge Helen Ortiz sat in her chambers after the Vail hearing, thinking about the young couple she'd just given a second chance. She'd bent the rules, she knew that. Judges typically couldn't mandate counseling for people who wanted a divorce. But she'd been on the bench long enough to know when people were making decisions out of hurt rather than wisdom. She'd seen Cameron Vail's face when he held his son. That wasn't a man who wanted to walk away. That was a man who'd been sleepwalking through his own life and just woke up. And Isabel Vail, bringing that baby to court, still wearing her wedding ring even though she'd signed divorce papers. That wasn't a woman ready to move on. That was a woman hoping to be proven wrong about giving up. Judge Ortiz had lost her own husband 15 years ago to a heart attack. They'd spent their last year arguing about his work hours, about him missing dinners and family events. She'd threatened divorce more than once. And then he was gone, and all those arguments felt so small compared to what she'd lost. She couldn't save her marriage, but maybe she could save theirs. She pulled out the paperwork for the parenting classes and counseling services. She selected the best programs in the city, ones with proven track records. Then she had her clerk call both lawyers to provide the information. This couple would get every tool they needed to succeed. What they did with those tools was up to them. Meanwhile, Cameron sat in his car in the courthouse parking lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He pulled out his phone and opened his calendar. The next 90 days were packed. Product launches, investor meetings, board presentations, strategy sessions. His company was in the middle of expanding into 3 new markets. He was supposed to fly to Singapore next week for partnership negotiations. He started making calls. First, to his executive team. I'm taking a leave of absence. Effective immediately. 90 days. The conference call erupted in protests. Cameron, we can't run the company without you for 90 days. The Singapore deal needs you personally. What about the board meeting? Jonathan will handle everything as interim CEO, Cameron said. He knows the company as well as I do. Better, maybe, because he has better work-life balance. Trust him. Trust the team we built. I'll be available for emergencies only. Everything else goes through Jonathan. After an hour of pushing back, they finally accepted it. Cameron felt lighter than he had in years. He called his assistant next. Patricia, clear my calendar for 90 days. Everything. Reschedule what can be rescheduled. Cancel what can't be. And I need you to block out every Saturday morning and every Wednesday evening. Those are non-negotiable. Patricia, who'd been with him for 8 years, was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Is this about your family? Yes. Good. It's about time. I'll take care of everything. Cameron's next call was to the parenting class coordinator. A kind woman named Mrs. Thompson answered and explained the class structure. We meet Saturdays from 9 to noon. It's hands-on learning. We'll teach you diaper changing, feeding, bathing, sleep routines, developmental milestones, everything you need to know about caring for an infant. I'll be there this Saturday, Cameron promised. Then he called Dr. Rachel Green, the therapist Judge Ortiz had assigned. Her voicemail said she was with a patient, but she'd return calls within 2 hours. Cameron left a message explaining the court order and asking to schedule their first session. While he waited for her callback, Cameron drove to a bookstore. He found the parenting section and started loading books into a basket. What to expect the first year. The happiest baby on the block. The new father, a dad's guide to the first year. He bought 10 books, enough to fill his arms. At the register the clerk smiled. New dad. 3 weeks new, Cameron said. And very behind on learning what I should have learned months ago. Never too late to start, the clerk said kindly. Cameron hoped she was right. Dr. Green called back an hour later. Her voice was warm but professional. Mr. Vail, I received the court order. I have to tell you up front, I don't usually take court-mandated cases. Therapy only works when people want to be there. I want to be there, Cameron said quickly. The court mandate might have forced the issue, but I need help. My marriage is falling apart because I don't know how to balance work and family. I need someone to teach me. Dr. Green was quiet for a moment, then said, All right. Wednesday at 7. My office downtown. I'll need to meet with you and your wife together, but I'll also want individual sessions with each of you. This isn't going to be easy, Mr. Vail. Real change requires real work. I'm ready to work. We'll see, Dr. Green said not unkindly. Most people say they're ready until they realize what change actually costs. That night, Cameron sat in his hotel room surrounded by parenting books. He read about newborn development, about feeding schedules, about the importance of skin-to-skin contact and responsive parenting. Every page made him realize how much he'd missed, how much Isabel had been doing alone. He texted her, "Can I come see Benjamin tomorrow? Just for an hour. I want to start spending time with him." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, 10 in the morning. 1 hour. Don't be late. Cameron set 3 alarms to make sure he wouldn't oversleep. The next morning he arrived at the house at 9:55, 5 minutes early. He stood on the porch of what used to be his home, feeling like a stranger visiting. He rang the doorbell instead of using his key. That felt more respectful somehow. Isabel answered with Benjamin in her arms. She wore a blue shirt and comfortable pants, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired but beautiful. She always looked beautiful to Cameron, even when she was exhausted and angry with him. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The house smelled like baby powder and coffee. Cameron saw the living room had been transformed. A playmat on the floor, a bouncer seat in the corner, burp cloths draped over every surface. Evidence of the life happening here without him. "You can hold him if you want," Isabel said. "But wash your hands first. And support his head." Cameron went to the kitchen sink and washed his hands thoroughly, like he was scrubbing for surgery. Then he came back and carefully took Benjamin from Isabel's arms. The baby was awake this time, eyes open and alert. He looked at Cameron with unfocused attention, and Cameron felt his heart expand. "Hi, buddy," Cameron said softly. "It's me again. Your dad. I'm going to be here more now. I'm going to learn how to take care of you properly." Isabel sat on the couch watching them carefully. Cameron could feel her evaluating him, waiting to see if this was real or just another false promise. "I started parenting classes," Cameron said, still looking at Benjamin. "First one is Saturday. And we have couples counseling Wednesday. Dr. Rachel Green." "I know. The court sent me the information. I also took a leave of absence from work. 90 days. Jonathan's running the company." Isabel's head snapped up. "You did what?" "I took a leave of absence. I can't do this halfway, Isabel. I can't learn to be a father and husband while working 80-hour weeks. So I stepped back. The company will survive without me for 3 months. My family won't survive without me at all." Isabel stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Cameron, you've never taken more than 3 days off in 8 years. You worked from the hospital when you had appendicitis. And you're taking 90 days? I should have done it 9 months ago. I'm doing it now." They sat in silence for a while. Benjamin fell asleep in Cameron's arms, his tiny body relaxing completely. Cameron studied his son's face, memorizing every detail. The way his eyebrows arched. The small birthmark on his left temple. The way his lips moved slightly in sleep like he was dreaming. "He's perfect," Cameron whispered. "He is," Isabel agreed softly. "He's the best thing I've ever done. Tell me about him. Everything. I want to know everything." So Isabel did. She told Cameron about Benjamin's birth, about those 14 hours of labor. She told him about the first time Benjamin opened his eyes, about his first bath, about how he hated having his diaper changed but loved being held. She told him about the scary moment when Benjamin choked on milk and she had to turn him over and pat his back until he coughed it up. She told him about the first time Benjamin smiled, probably gas but maybe real. She told him about singing to Benjamin at 2 in the morning, about the exhaustion and joy of new motherhood, about every moment Cameron had missed. Cameron listened to all of it, fighting tears. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for any of that." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't change the past. It only changes the future if you actually do something different." "I will. I am. Starting now." Isabel looked at him with an expression that held both hope and doubt. "We'll see." When the hour was up, Cameron reluctantly gave Benjamin back. He stood at the door, not wanting to leave. "Can I come back tomorrow? Same time?" Isabel hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. Tomorrow at 10. Cameron left feeling both hopeful and terrified. He had 89 days left to prove himself. 89 days to learn everything he should have learned over 9 months. 89 days to become the father and husband his family deserved. He spent the rest of that day reading his parenting books, taking notes like he was studying for the most important test of his life. Because he was. The first parenting class was humbling. Cameron arrived Saturday morning at the West Side Family Center and immediately realized he was the only father coming alone. Every other man had his partner with him, couples attending together, supporting each other through the learning process. Cameron sat by himself at a table meant for two, feeling conspicuously alone. The instructor, Mr. Davis, was a gentle man in his 50s with kind eyes and an easy smile. Welcome everyone. Over the next few weeks, we're going to learn the practical skills of caring for your newborns. By the end of this class, you'll be confident in diapering, feeding, bathing, soothing, and understanding your baby's cues. They started with diaper changing. Mr. Davis brought out demonstration dolls and walked them through the process step by step. Cameron fumbled with the tiny diaper, struggling to get it positioned correctly. The couple next to him managed it smoothly on their first try, laughing together when their doll's diaper sagged slightly. Don't worry, Mr. Davis said, noticing Cameron's frustration. It takes practice. You'll change hundreds of diapers in the first few weeks. You'll be an expert before you know it. Cameron practiced for an hour, determined to master this basic skill. By the end of class, he could change a diaper in under a minute. It felt like a small victory. Wednesday evening, Cameron met Isabel at Dr. Rachel Green's office. The waiting room was decorated in calming blues and greens, with comfortable chairs and soft music. Isabel arrived with Benjamin in the carrier, looking nervous. "Hi," Cameron said. "Hi," Isabel replied. They sat in awkward silence until the receptionist called them back. Dr. Green's office was warm and inviting. She was a black woman in her 40s with natural locks and a presence that immediately put Cameron at ease. She gestured for them to sit on a comfortable couch while she took the chair across from them. "Thank you both for coming," Dr. Green said. "I know this isn't a typical situation, being court-ordered and all. But I want to make something clear from the start. I'm not here to save your marriage. I'm here to help you both communicate better, understand each other better, and make informed decisions about your future. Whether you stay married or divorce is up to you." She looked at Cameron. "Mr. Vale, why don't you tell me in your own words what brought you to my office?" Cameron took a deep breath. "I destroyed my marriage by prioritizing work over everything else. I missed my wife's pregnancy. I missed my son's birth. I was building a company while my family fell apart. And I didn't realize what I was doing until it was almost too late." "Almost too late," Dr. Green repeated. "So you think it's not too late?" "I hope it's not too late. I'm here to do whatever it takes to fix what I broke." Dr. Green turned to Isabel. "And you, Mrs. Vale? What brought you here?" Isabel looked down at Benjamin sleeping in the carrier. "A judge who thinks my marriage is worth saving. I'm not sure I agree with her, but I'm willing to try for 90 days. For Benjamin. He deserves a father who shows up. And what about you? Do you deserve a husband who shows up?" Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "I used to think so. Now I don't know what I deserve. I just know what I won't accept anymore. I won't accept being alone in my marriage. I won't accept raising my son with a father who's physically present but emotionally absent. I won't accept promises that mean nothing." Dr. Green nodded slowly. "That's a good starting place. Knowing what you won't accept. Now we need to figure out what you will accept. What you need. What you want. And whether Mr. Vale is capable of providing those things." The session lasted an hour. Dr. Green asked hard questions that made both Cameron and Isabel uncomfortable. She made them talk about their childhoods, their parents' marriages, their fears and expectations. By the end, Cameron felt emotionally wrung out but strangely hopeful. This was real work. Hard work. The kind that might actually change things. Over the next few weeks, Cameron fell into a routine. Every morning at 10, he'd visit the house to spend time with Benjamin. Isabel would let him in, watch him hold their son, and slowly, carefully begin to trust him with small tasks. First just holding. Then burping. Then diaper changes. Then feeding with bottles of pumped milk. Cameron was terrible at first. He held Benjamin too stiffly, didn't burp him properly, fumbled with bottle temperature. But he kept trying. He asked questions. He watched how Isabel did things and tried to copy her gentle confidence. And slowly, very slowly, he got better. "You're doing good," Isabel said one morning as Cameron successfully got Benjamin to take a full bottle. "He's more relaxed with you now." "Really?" Cameron looked down at his son, who was eating contentedly. "I can't tell the difference yet." "I can. He trusts you more. Babies can feel when you're nervous or uncertain. You're more confident now." The praise felt better than any business achievement Cameron had ever accomplished. Making his son comfortable meant more than closing million-dollar deals. Saturday parenting classes continued. Cameron learned infant CPR, how to bathe a baby safely, how to recognize signs of illness, how to create healthy sleep routines. He took notes on everything, studied between classes, practiced on Benjamin during his daily visits. The other parents in the class started talking to him, asking why his wife wasn't with him. Cameron told them honestly, "I messed up. I wasn't there for her during the pregnancy. Now I'm trying to learn everything I should have learned then." Most people were sympathetic. One father pulled him aside after class. "My wife almost left me too. I was working all the time, missing everything. What saved us was me actually changing, not just promising to change." "Sounds like you're doing that. Keep going." Wednesday counseling sessions were harder. Dr. Green pushed them to talk about painful things. About Isabel's loneliness during pregnancy. About Cameron's fear of failure. About their different love languages and communication styles. About resentment and hurt and broken trust. One session, Dr. Green asked Cameron directly, "What were you afraid of when Isabel was pregnant?" Cameron thought for a long time. "I was afraid of becoming my father. He loved us, but he was never home. He worked himself to death trying to provide. And when he died, we had nothing. No savings, no insurance. I watched my mother struggle, and I promised myself I'd never let that happen to my family. So I worked. I built wealth. I thought I was protecting them." "But you were repeating the same pattern," Dr. Green said gently. "Your father was never home. You're never home. You missed your childhood. You missed your son's birth. You were so afraid of becoming him that you became exactly like him." The realization hit Cameron like a physical blow. He'd spent his whole adult life trying not to be his father, and he'd ended up walking the same path anyway. "How do I stop?" Cameron asked. "How do I be different?" "You already are being different," Dr. Green said. "You're here. You took a leave of absence. You're learning to care for your son. You're showing up. The question is whether you can sustain this after 90 days, or whether you'll slip back into old patterns when the pressure's off." That was the question haunting Cameron every day. Could he really change permanently? Or would he eventually revert to the workaholic CEO he'd always been? 6 weeks into the 90 days, Cameron made a decision. He called Jonathan. "I want to restructure my role in the company," Cameron said. "Permanently. I'll come back after this leave of absence, but I want to work remotely 3 days a week. And I want to cap my hours at 50 per week maximum. No more 80-hour weeks. No more missing family dinners and bedtimes." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. "That's a big change. The board might not like it. Then they can replace me. My family is more important than any board. If they can't accept a CEO who has boundaries, I'll step down." "You'd really walk away from the company you built?" "I'd rather walk away from the company than lose my family again. What's the point of building an empire if I'm alone in it?" "All right," Jonathan said. "I'll back you on this. Let's restructure your role. Hire a COO to handle day-to-day operations. You focus on strategy and big-picture decisions. That can definitely be done in 50 hours and 3 remote days." Cameron felt relief wash over him. He could do this. He could have both a career and a family. He just needed to stop trying to do everything and learn to delegate, to trust his team, to prioritize differently. He shared this decision with Isabel at their next counseling session. "I've restructured my role at the company," Cameron told her. 50-hour work weeks maximum. 3 days remote. I hired a COO to handle operations. When I come back after this leave, it'll be different. I'll be different." Isabel looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What if you can't stick to it? What if the pressure builds and you slip back?" "Then I'll quit," Cameron said simply. "I'll sell my shares and walk away. I'm not losing you and Benjamin again. Not for any amount of money or success." Dr. Green leaned forward. "Mrs. Vale, how does it feel to hear your husband say that?" Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "Scary. Because I want to believe him. I want to think this is real. But I've believed his promises before, and they always turned into nothing. This time is different," Cameron said. "I've put it in writing with the board. I've made it official. I've built accountability into my role. I can't work 80-hour weeks anymore even if I wanted to. The structure won't allow it." "Actions over words," Dr. Green said. "Mrs. Vale needs to see sustained change over time. 3 weeks of good behavior isn't enough to rebuild trust that was broken over 9 months. But it's a start." Cameron understood. He had to prove himself not just for 90 days but for the rest of his life. At 8 weeks, Cameron asked if he could start staying at the house overnight. "Not in our bedroom," he clarified quickly. "I can sleep on the couch. But I want to help with night feedings. I want to be there when Benjamin wakes up at 2 in the morning. I want to share that load instead of leaving it all to you." Isabel hesitated for days before agreeing. 1-week trial. If it doesn't work, you go back to the hotel. That first night on the couch was uncomfortable but worth it. At 2 in the morning, Benjamin cried. Cameron jumped up before Isabel could even get out of bed. He changed Benjamin's diaper, warmed a bottle, and fed his son while Isabel watched from the bedroom doorway. "Go back to sleep," Cameron said softly. "I've got this." Isabel stood there for a moment longer, then nodded and went back to bed. Cameron sat in the dark living room, feeding his son, and felt more peace than he'd felt in years. This was what mattered. This quiet moment. This connection. This purpose that had nothing to do with profit margins. 1 week became 2. 2 became 4. Cameron stayed on the couch, but he was present in the house, part of the daily rhythm of caring for Benjamin. He learned to anticipate Benjamin's needs, to read his cues, to soothe him when nothing else worked. Isabel's wall started to come down, slowly. She'd smile when Cameron successfully got Benjamin to sleep. She'd thank him when he did the dishes without being asked. She'd share funny stories about Benjamin's day. They weren't lovers again, not yet. But they were becoming partners. Co-parents who worked together instead of existing in parallel. At 10 weeks, Cameron made another gesture. "Your sister Nadine helped you when I wasn't there. She was at the hospital, helped those first weeks, put her life on hold for you. I'd like to pay for her college tuition. All of it. She shouldn't have student debt when I have the money to help." Isabel looked shocked. "Cameron, that's over $100,000. She earned it by being there when I wasn't. Let me do this, please. Let me help the people who helped you." Isabel accepted with gratitude and called Nadine immediately to share the news. Nadine cried on the phone, thanking Cameron over and over. It felt good to use his wealth for something meaningful, something that showed appreciation instead of just showing off. Cameron also hired a night nurse to come 3 nights a week, over Isabel's initial protests. "You need rest," he insisted gently. "You've been doing this alone for too long. Let someone help. That's not weakness. That's wisdom." Isabel finally accepted, and the extra sleep transformed her. She had more energy, more patience, more ability to enjoy Benjamin instead of just surviving each day. Cameron saw the woman he'd fallen in love with emerging from the exhausted shell she'd become. As the 90 days approached their end, Cameron and Isabel both knew they had a decision to make. Continue with the divorce? Or try to rebuild their marriage? The answer came not in a dramatic moment, but in a quiet one. 6 weeks into the 90 days, Cameron did something he'd never done in 15 years of running his company. He took a full week off, not for a business trip or conference, but purely to be with his family. He cleared his calendar completely, turned off his work email, and showed up at the house Monday morning with a plan. "I'm here for the week," he told Isabel. "Whatever you need, whatever Benjamin needs, I'm here. Use me. Put me to work." Isabel looked skeptical. "You're going to last a whole week without checking your phone for work stuff?" "I turned off my work email. Jonathan has my number for emergencies only. This week I'm just a dad and hopefully still your husband. That's all." The first day, Cameron realized exactly how hard Isabel had been working. Benjamin was a good baby, but good was relative. He still needed to eat every 3 hours, needed diaper changes constantly, needed to be held and soothed and entertained. In between, there were dishes to wash, laundry to fold, meals to prepare, and a house to keep clean. Isabel had been doing all of this alone while recovering from childbirth. By noon, Cameron was exhausted. By evening, he was wondering how Isabel had survived the past 6 weeks. By bedtime, he had a new appreciation for just how strong his wife was. "I had no idea," he told her as they got ready for bed, him still on the couch. "I knew it was hard, but I didn't understand how hard. You've been doing this alone for 6 weeks, and before that, you did the whole pregnancy alone. I don't know how you did it." "You just do," Isabel said quietly. "Because you have to. Because your baby needs you, and there's no one else to step up. There should have been someone. There should have been me. Well, you're here now. That's something." Cameron made breakfast Tuesday morning, pancakes and eggs while Isabel fed Benjamin. He did 3 loads of laundry. He scrubbed the bathroom. He vacuumed. He meal prepped dinners for the rest of the week. He answered every one of Benjamin's cries, changed every diaper, gave Isabel space to shower and rest and just breathe. Wednesday he took things further. "I'd like to hire a cleaning service to come twice a week," he said. "And maybe a meal delivery service so you don't have to cook every night." Isabel started to refuse, then stopped herself. "Actually, that would help a lot. Thank you." "You don't have to do everything alone anymore," Cameron said. "Let me help. Let me make your life easier." Thursday, Cameron suggested they go for a walk together, all 3 of them. They hadn't done anything as a family unit yet. They bundled Benjamin into the stroller and walked through their neighborhood, the early autumn air crisp and pleasant. People they passed smiled at them, A young family out enjoying the day. Cameron wondered if they looked normal from the outside, like a happy couple instead of two people trying to figure out if they still had a marriage. "This is nice," Isabel said as they walked. "I haven't left the house much since Benjamin was born. Just for doctor appointments and that court date. We should do this more often. Fresh air is good for all of us." They walked for an hour talking about small things. The changing leaves. The neighbor's new dog. Benjamin's upcoming 2-month checkup. Normal couple conversation that felt almost revolutionary after months of only talking about logistics or arguing about Cameron's work schedule. Friday, Cameron's biggest test came. His phone rang with Jonathan's number. Emergency. The Singapore deal was collapsing, and the partners wanted to talk to Cameron personally. They wouldn't negotiate with anyone else. Cameron looked at his phone, then at Isabel feeding Benjamin, then back at his phone. Months ago he would have answered immediately. Weeks ago he might have struggled with the decision. Now it was clear. He declined the call and texted Jonathan, "Whatever they're offering, take it if it's fair, walk away if it's not. You have full authority to decide. I'm with my family." Jonathan texted back, "Even if walking away costs us 50 million? Cameron replied, "Even then. My family is worth more than 50 million. Trust yourself." "I do." He put his phone away and didn't check it for the rest of the day. When Jonathan called later to report they'd closed a modified deal for 40 million instead of 50, Cameron congratulated him and meant it. The company would be fine. More importantly, he'd passed his own test. He'd chosen family over money when it really counted. That evening, Cameron ordered takeout from Isabel's favorite restaurant. They ate together while Benjamin slept in his bassinet nearby. It felt almost like a date, like they were a real couple again instead of two strangers sharing space. "Thank you for this week," Isabel said. "For being here. For helping. For actually doing what you promised instead of just talking about it. I should have done this 9 months ago. Every day since then. You can't change the past. You can only change right now and tomorrow and the day after that. Then that's what I'll do. Every day. For the rest of my life if you'll let me." Isabel looked at him with an expression that held both hope and caution. "The 90 days are almost up. We have to go back to court soon and tell the judge what we want." "I know what I want," Cameron said. "I want my family. I want to stay married. I want to be Benjamin's father and your husband. I want to wake up in this house every morning and go to sleep here every night. I want to build a life with you, not just a company. But I know what I want doesn't matter if you don't want the same thing." "I don't know what I want yet," Isabel admitted. "I'm scared, Cameron. I'm scared to believe this is real. I'm scared you'll go back to work and slip into old patterns. I'm scared of being disappointed again. Then let me prove it to you. Not just for 90 days but for as long as it takes. Let me show you every day that I've changed, that this is real, that I'm not going anywhere." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally Isabel said, "Ask me again in 2 weeks. After we see Dr. Green a few more times. After the 90 days are really up. Ask me then and I'll give you an answer." Cameron nodded. 2 more weeks. He could do 2 more weeks. He could do forever if that's what it took. The next day Cameron made one more gesture. He called his mother, something he rarely did because work always got in the way. "Mom, I want you to meet your grandson. I'll fly you here, put you up in a hotel, whatever you need. Please come." His mother arrived Sunday morning, crying the moment she saw Benjamin. "He looks just like you did," she said, holding her grandson with practiced ease. "Oh, Cameron, he's perfect." Over lunch, Cameron's mother pulled him aside. "Your wife is a strong woman. Beautiful inside and out. Don't lose her like I lost your father." "What do you mean?" "Your father worked himself to death, literally. He was so afraid of failing us financially that he never gave us what we really needed, which was him. Time. Presence. Love expressed through being there, not just through paychecks. I begged him to slow down but he never listened. And then he was gone, and I'd have traded everything we owned just to have him back for one more day." She squeezed Cameron's hand. "Don't make his mistake. Don't wait until it's too late. Your wife is giving you a chance to do it differently. Take that chance. Your son needs his father present, not perfect. They're not rich. Show him what matters by how you spend your time." Cameron hugged his mother, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. His father had loved them, but love wasn't enough if you weren't there to show it. Cameron was determined to do better. As his mother's visit ended and she prepared to fly home, she hugged Isabel. "Thank you for giving my son another chance. Not many women would. You're showing him grace he doesn't deserve, and I hope he spends the rest of his life earning it." After she left, Cameron and Isabel sat together on the couch, Benjamin between them. They weren't touching, weren't even particularly close, but they were together. A family unit, however fragile. "Your mother's wonderful," Isabel said. "She told me not to make my father's mistakes. To choose family over work. To be present. Are you going to listen to her?" "I already am. That's what this whole 90 days has been about. Learning to listen, to prioritize, to show up. I'm not perfect at it yet, but I'm trying." "I can see that," Isabel said softly. "I see you trying. That's more than I had before." 2 weeks later, the 90 days came to an end. 90 days after Judge Ortiz had mandated their counseling and parenting classes, Cameron and Isabel returned to the same courtroom. But everything felt different this time. Cameron wasn't sitting with his lawyer planning a divorce strategy. He was sitting with hope, ready to fight for his marriage. Isabel arrived with Benjamin, now 3.5 months old. The baby had grown, his features more defined, his eyes alert and tracking movement. When he saw Cameron, Benjamin smiled, a real social smile, and reached his hands toward him. Cameron's heart swelled. His son recognized him. After 3 months of showing up every day, Benjamin knew his father. Judge Ortiz entered and everyone stood. When she told them to sit, she looked between Cameron and Isabel with an expression that might have been satisfaction. "Well," she said, 90 days have passed. I've received reports from Mr. Davis at the Parenting Center and Dr. Rachel Green. Both reports indicate that Mr. Vale attended every required session, participated fully, and showed significant growth." She looked at Cameron. "Mr. Vale, how do you feel these 90 days went?" Cameron stood. "Your Honor, these were the most important 90 days of my life. I learned to be a father. I learned what I'd been missing by putting work first. I restructured my entire life and career around my family. I took a leave of absence, attended every class, went to every counseling session, and spent time with my son every single day. And are you prepared to continue this changed behavior moving forward?" "Yes, Your Honor. I've permanently restructured my role at my company. I work 50 hours per week maximum, 3 days remote. I have accountability built into my contract. I can't slip back into old patterns because the structure won't allow it." Judge Ortiz nodded, then turned to Isabel. "Mrs. Vale, stand please. What do you want to happen today?" Isabel stood slowly, holding Benjamin. She looked at Cameron, really looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something. Cameron held his breath. "Your Honor," Isabel began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. 3 months ago, I stood in this courtroom ready to end my marriage. I was hurt, angry, and convinced my husband would never change. I brought my baby to show him what he was losing, hoping maybe it would wake him up. I never actually believed it would work." She paused, adjusting Benjamin in her arms. "But I was wrong. These 90 days I've watched my husband transform. He didn't just talk about changing. He actually changed. He shows up every day. He gets up for night feedings. He knows Benjamin's schedule better than I do sometimes. He's present, engaged, and genuine in ways I never thought possible." Cameron felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't bother wiping them away. "More than that," Isabel continued, "he's shown me that he values our family above everything else. He turned off his phone during a major crisis at work to stay with us. He hired help for me without making it feel like charity. He brought his mother to meet Benjamin. He listens in counseling. He tries, every single day, to be better." Judge Ortiz leaned forward. "So what are you asking this court to do?" Isabel looked directly at Cameron. "I'm asking you to dismiss the divorce petition, Your Honor. I want to stay married. I want to give our family a real chance. Not because a judge ordered it, but because I believe in the man my husband is becoming." The courtroom was completely silent. Cameron couldn't breathe. She was choosing him. Choosing them. Giving their marriage another chance. Judge Ortiz smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her usually stern face. "Mr. Vale, what do you say to that?" Cameron crossed the space between the tables. He stood in front of Isabel, looking at her and their son. "Isabel, I don't deserve this second chance. I know that. But I promise you I will spend the rest of my life earning it. I will show up, every single day. I will put you and Benjamin first, always. I will be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning." He dropped to one knee right there in the courtroom. "Will you let me come home? Really home, not just sleeping on the couch? Will you let me be your husband again?" Isabel was crying now, tears running down her face. "Yes, yes, come home. Let's be a family." Cameron stood and wrapped his arms around both of them, holding his wife and son close. Benjamin made happy sounds between them, unaware of the significance of the moment but somehow perfect anyway. Judge Ortiz banged her gavel lightly. The divorce petition is dismissed. This couple is staying married and I couldn't be happier about it. Mr. and Mrs. Vale, I don't usually do this but I'm proud of both of you. You did the hard work. You chose love over hurt, hope over fear, family over everything else. That's what marriage is supposed to be. She looked at Cameron specifically. And Mr. Vale, I'm going to check in with you in 6 months. I want to make sure you're maintaining these changes. If I hear you've slipped back into old patterns, I'll be disappointed. Don't disappoint me. I won't, Your Honor. I promise. They left the courtroom together, a family reunited. Gerald Morrison looked confused but pleased. Denise Crawford shook Cameron's hand and told him not to mess this up again. Cameron promised he wouldn't. Outside, under the autumn sunshine, they stood on the courthouse steps. Isabel looked at Cameron with love he hadn't seen in almost a year. Take us home, she said. Cameron drove them back to their house, this time walking in through the front door as a family. He carried Benjamin while Isabel unlocked the door, and they stepped into their home together. I'll move my stuff out of the hotel tomorrow, Cameron said. Move it into our bedroom, Isabel said. Not the couch. Not the guest room. Our bedroom. Where you belong. That night they put Benjamin to bed together. They stood over his crib, watching him sleep, and Cameron put his arm around Isabel's waist. She leaned into him and it felt right. It felt like home. I love you, Cameron said. I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it. Thank you for giving me the chance to remember. I love you too, Isabel replied. And I'm going to hold you to everything you promised. Please do. I need that accountability. I need you to call me out if I start slipping. We're partners now, really partners. Equal in this. They went to bed in their own room that night, lying beside each other for the first time in months. Cameron held Isabel's hand in the darkness, feeling grateful beyond words. 6 months later, they returned to court for Judge Ortiz's check-in. Cameron brought documentation showing his reduced work hours, testimonials from Dr. Green about their continued counseling, and pictures of their family life. But the best evidence was Isabel's face, glowing with happiness. He's kept every promise, Isabel told the judge. He's an amazing father and an even better husband. We're stronger now than we ever were before. Judge Ortiz smiled. That's what I like to hear. Case closed permanently. Go be happy. They did go be happy. Cameron never returned to working 80-hour weeks. His company thrived under the new structure, proving that being present didn't mean sacrificing success. Benjamin grew, hitting every milestone with both parents there to witness it. He took his first steps at 9 months old, and both Cameron and Isabel watched, crying happy tears. 2 years later, Isabel got pregnant again. This time, Cameron attended every appointment. He was there for every ultrasound. He held her hand through labor. He cut the umbilical cord of their daughter, Emily. And he never, not once, put work ahead of being present for his family. Cameron and Isabel renewed their vows on their 5th anniversary, a small ceremony in their backyard with Benjamin as the ring bearer. They promised to love each other, to show up for each other, to prioritize family over everything else. This time, Cameron meant every word and he had the track record to prove it. Years later, when Benjamin asked his parents how they fell in love, Isabel always told the story honestly. Your daddy and I had to fall apart before we could come back together stronger. He had to learn what mattered and I had to learn to give second chances. We almost lost each other, but love and hope brought us back. Cameron would add, I was lost in my work, building a company but losing my family. Then I held you for the first time and everything changed. You saved me, Benjamin. You and your mama. You taught me that success isn't measured in money but in moments. In bedtime stories and first steps and family dinners. In being there, really there, for the people you love. And Benjamin, listening to this story, would understand that his father wasn't perfect. But he was present. And that made all the difference.